Traveler apathy and every reliance on government bailout is the story of many airlines across the world in the midst of the global pandemic. Here in Nigeria, it's a tale of new airlines jostling to enter the country's vast domestic market, arguably the biggest in Africa. Despite the many stories of woe for existing domestic carriers, what exactly is the attraction for businessmen who are willing to fly solo on new aviation wings? That's our interest on the program. A warm welcome to Aviation this week on Channels Television. I'm Bukola Joe Oketumbi, and we're reaching you from the Muritala Mohammed Airport 2 in Lagos.
The International Air Transport Association expects net airline industry losses of $47.7 billion in 2021. This is an improvement on the estimated net industry loss of $126.4 billion in 2020. IATA adds that industry losses of this scale imply a cash burn of $81 billion in 2021, but sees a relief with government financial measures and capital markets having been filling this hole in airline balance sheets, preventing widespread bankruptcies. While it appears that the world is opening up, international travel is still more cautious. On the foreign front, Irish low-cost carrier Ryanair reported a record annual after-tax loss of $989 million early this week, after COVID-19 restrictions forced it to scrap over 80% of flights. But the Irish airline said there were signs the recovery had begun. Group Chief Executive Michael O'Leary said the airline was very optimistic for the coming couple of months as the UK's vaccine program continues to be a success.
But the last 12 months has been very difficult for the airline industry. We've seen 80% of our traffic has simply disappeared due to government restrictions. But we are very optimistic for the coming couple of months. The UK vaccine programme has been extraordinarily successful. We're up to 60% of the adult population has received their first dose. European countries recognise that. They're beginning to lift restrictions on inbound UK visitors. Portugal this morning. We're very hopeful that Italy and Greece will be added to that green list before the end of May, and Spain will come shortly thereafter.
Away from UK to Hong Kong, as a planned air travel bubble between Hong Kong and Singapore has been moved again. The bubble was initially slated to begin in November last year, but was called off after a rise in cases in Hong Kong. Under the plan, travelers will have to test negative for COVID-19 before departure and on arrival to move freely between the cities. Both sides say they remain committed to launching the bubble safely on or before June the 13th. Many countries and airlines appear to be getting out of the woods gradually. In Nigeria, domestic travel appears to be scaling up except for the paucity of aircraft occasioned by the pandemic. Beyond this, new airlines started by foraying heavily into the domestic market. A few months ago, United Nigeria, a local carrier with Enugu Airport base, made its entry. Green Africa Airways, NG Eagle, Rano Air, Northeast Shuttle are some of those gearing up to fly as they process their papers with the regulator. Just recently proposed Cross River State-owned carrier Cali Air brought in some aircraft into the country.
Cross River State government just brought an aircraft which is a 737 Classic, and basically that is the same aircraft that Aeroline is operating, one of the aircraft that Aeroline is operating. And as of today, Aero Contractors is the only maintenance organization that is approved by the Nigerian Civil Aviation. So, and Aero Contractors is the oldest airline today in Nigeria. It's an airline that has been in existence for almost 60 years in existence. So coming in business agreement with Cross River State government, I think is one of the best things. And honestly, I'm really happy. Not only that because of the business relationship, I'm just looking at also these are kind of like ideas that we want in this country.
Though a cheering development for the beleaguered industry, stakeholders have warmed up to the news with surprise and cautious optimism. For the country's air regulator, Nigeria is a huge market and the demand is growing and it's a virgin market that becomes larger. Passengers in the industry also see the incoming additions as an opportunity for price slashes and healthy competition.
Having more airline is part of the solution. For instance, this trip I'm cashing now took me more than 1 hour searching. They say fully booked. So I have to do like somebody fishing and then see that, oh, something has dropped. The price is crazy. The stress it puts on you is so much. But when we have more and the efficiency is actually there, then we will enjoy it.
Oh, I think it's a good thing. It creates a healthy competition. The more airlines we have, the more carriers we have, the more options the travelers are going to have. It helps neutralize the possibility of monopoly from the main carrier, such as Arik, Dana Air, and the other airline, the Air Peace. So I think it's always a good thing in a society to have a healthy competition. So by all means, we should have them come. Baggage handling and delays. So those are things, if they want to rise above their peers, they should focus on those areas, especially delay. If the flight's supposed to leave at 2 p.m., by all means, leave at least within 2 p.m.
Some others add that federal government should invest more in the sector.
I think time, right? I think every Nigerian can relate to the fact that our airlines are very terrible at keeping to time, right? Delayed flights, cancelled flights, without, good compensation. I don't think that's professional enough. Also, maybe customer service, can also be worked on. And then the maintenance of the flights as well.
The check-in process is still like you are going to war. It shouldn't happen like that. The federal government needs to improve even the road network leading to the airport. People miss their flight not because they didn't wake up early. You can stay in the traffic and miss your flight. It doesn't matter what time you left your house. So in terms of infrastructure and the terminal building itself, we haven't started.
Industry investors believe it's a lot of courage to float airlines at a time of global downturn, traveler apathy and heavy reliance on government bailout to save existing airlines from collapse. Some optimists foresee survival and win-win, where the new and old carriers are open to good business plans, merger and better cooperation to evolve stronger airlines that can compete on the international front.
On our interview segment, an aeronautical engineer who runs a maintenance hangar in Lagos is our guest and is also venturing into the premium end of the airline industry. He starts by saying that Nigeria needs new airlines to grow the sector, but is also cautious that new entrants must have their plans right.
If you compare Nigeria with other developed nations, in the US, for example, about 60% of their populations are actually flying every year. In Nigeria, just about 10% are flying every year. With 200 million people, by the time we have 20-30% of Nigerians flying, you can see the possibilities. Also, when you look at the issue of insecurity in the country, you will agree with me that more activity is increasing. And I'll tell you this also. Nigeria is the only country that is so lucky as far as aviation is actually concerned. But I can tell you that if you go to places like the United States of America, go to Europe, there's an airline I know that have 200-300 aircraft parked since COVID till today. They are not even flying. In Nigeria, you can see the demand. People, because we are moving around. We are lucky because of our temperate region. The fact that COVID has not affected us that much is, making people to go on with their normal activity. They can't go by the waterways. They can't go by road. They can't go by the rail. So aviation is the only way out. In the last few days, I have been to 5 states. In the last 3 to 4 days, I have been to 5 states. These states are red flag areas. They are not states that you can go by road, but I was able to make it, including flying into Maiduguri. So what I'm trying to say here is that in as much as there's insecurity, yes, there's a high demand for more aircraft seats to be available. And You know that the lifespan of an average airline in the country is about 10 years, if you look at history. And for most of those airlines, well, I just wish them well. I hope that they have good people that can actually advise them properly. Because I see people making a lot of mistakes, you know. We, Seven-Star Global Airlines, we are not coming in because of the idea of the high demand. We are coming in because it's something we've had in mind even before now. It's more of like a premium airline. It's not the same like what the normal scheduled operations actually. But for others, until I see their business model, I will not be able to say if they can actually survive it or not, because there are still challenges with maintenance. We are struggling. The MRO industry is quite slow. The growth is quite slow. We, you know, until we get to that point, because I can tell you that there are airlines that have 30 aircraft, 25 aircraft, and less than 10 is actually flying.
Airlines transport 52 million metric tons of goods a year, representing more than 35% of global trade by value, but less than 1% of world trade by volume. This is equivalent to $6.8 trillion worth of goods annually, or $18.6 billion worth of goods every day. Aircraft on the cargo airside of the international terminal in Lagos. This is one of the major hubs for air cargo in Nigeria, with the ground handlers having their terminal operations running. Cargo exporters at work put finishing touches to the consignment leaving the country. According to the International Air Transport Association, industry-wide available cargo tons kilometers went down 23.3% year-on-year in 2020, but cargo load factors, yields and revenues all rose to record high levels, providing support to airlines and some long-haul passenger services in the face of collapsing passenger revenues.
It's interesting to let you know that they find some of these made in Nigeria products a lot more superior, with a lot more quality than what they have in their different localities.
It saddens my heart when we as cargo airlines come to Lagos, drop the cargo, having to go to Accra or Nairobi in Kenya to pick up fresh flowers and veg to Europe.
Despite the pandemic in 2020, African airlines topped the growth charts both in 2020 overall and in December. Their international cargo ton kilometers increased by 1.9% year-on-year in 2020, the only region to accomplish this feat. This is not unconnected to airlines' continued lifting of essential items such as medical supplies and personal protective equipment. On the home front, the Nigerian Aviation Handling Company PLC had its revenue from export cargo business rise from 346.6 million naira to 397.4 million naira in 2020. Its counterpart, the Skyway Aviation Handling Company PLC, also grew its cargo handling export revenue from 318.38 million naira recorded in 2019 to 447.90 million in 2020.
When the pandemic came, what we also did was, when we had some exporters that had issues maybe with a particular airline that wasn't coming in anymore, we would try and link them up with every one of the airlines that were coming, so it would be their choice.
For many, the government must continually create an enabling environment for entrepreneurs, a system where goods, including perishable cargo, can be stored and taken to their destinations quickly.
At London City Airport, the air traffic controllers have gone. Perched above the terminal building, the old control tower with its panoramic windows is empty of controllers. Monitors, a few pens and some hand sanitizers are all that remains. City became the world's first major international airport to switch to a remote digital tower earlier this year and went public less than 2 weeks ago. The airport, nestled beside former dockyards a few miles east of London's Canary Wharf financial district, is London's smallest. Before the pandemic, it had 5 million passengers a year, mostly traveling on business to European destinations like Frankfurt and Amsterdam. City planes now take off and land guided by air traffic controllers who are based 90 miles away. They direct the airport using information from a newly built taller control tower stacked with 16 high-definition cameras and multiple sensors. The switch to remote air traffic control has raised a few eyebrows, but London City's chief operating officer says so far it has worked seamlessly.
So the existing air traffic control tower was over 30 years old and required some significant investment to upgrade it. We also have implemented some new aircraft stands and we needed to change the location of the air traffic control tower. So we've moved location and this is our new digital air traffic control tower. We cut over to that on the 23rd of January this year and began operating first flight from the 24th. And what that does is deliver digital air traffic control capability, and it's the first of its kind anywhere in the world at this scale.
Metal spikes guard the top of the 50-meter tower to protect the cameras from birds, and each camera has a self-cleaning mechanism that stops insects and debris from blurring images. Those images then travel multiple separate high-speed fiber links to the remote center in Swanwick, Hampshire, where London City's air traffic controllers are relocated. The live sound of the airport is piped into the new control center so that controllers still hear the plane's engines roaring into life and the reverse thrust of touchdown. And the 14 screens in the Swanwick control center are not at risk from a buffering internet or lost connection.
We're used to dealing with data and presenting that data to our controllers so that they can keep the aircraft separate, safely apart whilst they travel. So it's much the same here for the tower. We're using the data, we're presenting the pictures, we can see it, you can see it behind me, it's very much like sitting in the tower and seeing the aircraft operating. So it's a digital reproduction of the live picture. What you're seeing today is the live picture at London City. Then enhanced with additional data like aircraft call sign, maybe the route that it's going to, maybe the stand that it's going to. It allows us to add all of that to the data. So are there risks? Well, we think we've got all the risks well covered. So cybersecurity is well covered, for example. In terms of the job for the controller, it's very much like doing it in the same way as they would in the air traffic control tower.
For City Airport, the new remote tower, which costs just less than £20 million to design and build, is not about saving money. With the new technology, City's current number of controllers will be able to handle more plane movements once flying recovers after the pandemic. City will also be able to handle 45 plane movements per hour, up from 40 in 2019.
So we think that the digital tower is going to revolutionise how we can deliver airport services. So it allows us to reproduce what we do today, it allows us to further enhance that job, and potentially it allows us to group together different airports in one place and present different ways of efficiently delivering the service to the airport customer. So it really is the tip of the iceberg of improvement to what we can do for the airport ATC.
So fundamentally, the job hasn't changed. It's still about the controller's eyes finding the aircraft and monitoring it visually. The difference is we're using screens instead of windows.
The airport's plan for a remote tower dates to 2016, when it realized that in order to go ahead with a £500 million expansion plan to fit in extra bigger planes, it would need to significantly invest in the old control tower. It decided instead to build a new one, given the efficiency benefits offered by a new remote technology developed by Swedish company Saab. Heathrow, Britain's busiest airport, is also considering remote control towers in its future plans. Egypt is optimistic about welcoming more visitors this year, with numbers increasing steadily since January to around 500,000 tourists a month. Tourism revenue is an important source of foreign currency for Egypt, and this plunged by 70% in 2020 due to the coronavirus pandemic.
We are very optimistic about the resumption because we received about 3 million tourists since the resumption, since the beginning of July 2020. But the numbers are increasing since January 2021. Now we are receiving around 500,000 tourists per month. More than 65% of them are coming to the Red Sea and the South Sinai Governorate because they are open air spaces and water activities, and it's exactly what the tourist is seeking after the COVID. As for the revenue, now we are running around 50% of our numbers before the pandemic. So it's a loss of 50% of our income, around $500,000 per month.
Tourism in Egypt usually accounts for up to 15% of the country's gross domestic product. Monthly tourism revenues stood about $500 million in April, half of what they were before the pandemic. But Egypt hopes for a recovery by the end of the year, when it aims to have vaccinated tourism staff in resorts along the Red Sea and named the area a COVID-free destination. Egypt and Russia in April agreed to resume all flights between the two countries. Flights to resort destinations Sharm el-Sheikh and Hurghada were suspended after a Russian passenger plane crashed in Sinai in October 2015, killing 224 people. Now to Italy, as travelers arriving at Rome's Fiumicino Airport were relieved that Italy has scrapped mandatory quarantine for visitors from the European Union, Britain and Israel who test negative for COVID-19, as the government looks to give summer tourism a boost. Before now, people entering Italy from these countries were requested to quarantine for 5 days and test both before arrival as well as at the end of their isolation period.
I'm with the EUAPRO. We must open. We must open because life without work is nothing. Okay, we have this virus, but we have seen a lot of viruses and we have passed through, so it's not that coronavirus that must keep me at home. I need to work.
For me, it's a welcome change because it means that I have a holiday home in Ostuni, and when I return, I need to do many things like collect water for the house, get pet food for my cat and dog. So it's good I don't have to go into isolation for 5 days.
Yeah, allowing people in, keeping the safety that has been a hallmark of Italy's response to the pandemic, and at the same time allowing the country to go back economically, to what it was before. So I'm not worried, but I have also been vaccinated. So I think that there is a way that those things can be done safely. So I'm not particularly worried. I think it's time for the country to move on and for people who depend on tourism to be able to earn their living again.
The government has also extended the COVID-tested flights to cover some destinations in Canada, Japan and the United Arab Emirates. There will be no quarantine for those who test negative upon arrival on these routes, as well as on certain flights to Rome, Milan, Naples and Venice. Entry restrictions on those coming from Brazil will remain in place according to the country's health ministry. This is our final destination on the program. Thank you so much for staying with us. I'm Bukola Joe Oketumbi. See you next time.